Thank you for joining me for this episode of God Talk, and it has been an interesting week. The Republican Civil War is in full force, and they voted their speaker out of office, and there's a lot of stuff going on the political end. But I don't really want to spend too much time on that. We might touch it towards the end of the podcast. But what I'd like to talk to you about in this episode is I'd like to talk to you about the Pope, football, and football, which is actually soccer. But they call it football everywhere else. So I'm headed all over the place, but there's some interesting stories to talk about in each of these. We're going to talk about the good, the bad, and the ugly, but actually the order is the bad, the good, and the ugly. So we're going to start with the bad, and we're going to talk a little bit about the Pope. Now, you can say what you want to say about the Catholic Church, but they are, at least socially, very conservative. Or they're supposed to be, not that all Catholics are. And there was an article that came out, and Pope Francis, who's definitely been one of the more liberal-leaning popes, if popes can be liberal-leaning, and I guess they can. Normally they're not. But Pope Francis has opened the door on Monday for some Catholic priests to be able to bless some same-sex unions, is the word that was coming out of the Vatican on Monday, which is really a reversal, a complete reversal of the official Vatican position. And it's really kind of a complicated story, but I want to unpack it a little bit just in case you heard it. And what the Pope's saying is he's not suggesting that same-sex unions be blessed like a marriage, or that in general that they should, but it's much more subtle than that. And what he's saying is it should be decided on a case-by-case basis, and even when that same-sex union is blessed by a priest, on a case-by-case basis, that blessing should not be seen equivalent to a heterosexual wedding ceremony. As recently as really 2021, the Vatican said that they could not, nor would they not, condone a same-sex union because God doesn't bless sin, and honestly, that's the truth. And that's the stance that they should take. But now the Pope's signaling that, well, there might be some exceptions to that rule. And what's dangerous is that's just how it's happened in this country, right? It started off that the same-sex marriages were wrong. Okay, we're not going to do same-sex marriages, but we'll allow them to have a civil ceremony. We'll allow them to have benefits with their work that's equivalent to, being someone's spouse, but we won't call it that. And the next thing you know, the Supreme Court's making every state in the United States have same-sex marriages. So what's happened and where this comes about is there were 5 very conservative cardinals, from Asia, Europe, Africa, and the United States, and Latin America. These 5 conservative cardinals really pushed on the Pope to give some clarification. Why? Because there have been some priests in Germany that have recently openly blessed same-sex marriages, which was in direct confrontation, disobedience to their own diocese. So you have this event take place in Germany, and these priests are blessing these same-sex marriages, and you have these very conservative archbishops that are saying, cardinals, not archbishops, that are saying the Vatican needs to kind of take a stance on this. You need to reaffirm what the traditional teaching of the church always is. Probably need to deal with these priests in Germany that are doing this. And the Pope wouldn't do it. He says in response to these cardinals, he says that there can be different forms of blessing, and it needs to be on a case by case basis. And he says to to the cardinals that the clergy ought to show pastoral charity, including kindness, patience, understanding, and encouragement. So he's not saying that it just should be accepted. He's saying, I'm not going to do anything about these German priests because on rare occasion, an individual priest might find it in his pastoral heart to offer some sort of blessing upon a same-sex union. Mind you, this is a Catholic church that unless something's changed, I don't believe you can get married in the Catholic Church unless you're Catholic. So, like you can't marry a Baptist, you can't marry a Lutheran. If you're not marrying a Catholic, you can't be married in the Catholic Church. So that's a rule, but yet they're willing to do a blessing of same-sex unions. He made it clear in his defense that he doesn't think that the sanction. He doesn't believe that an ecclesiastical change should be taking place. That is like this shouldn't be an official teaching of the church. In fact, he suggests that there has been no change in the teaching of the church. But as he's done in other things, he tends to push the envelope, and just like in cases of where things aren't clear or cases that are special circumstances, he pushes for charity, which is good. But let's go back to the original statement from 2021. You can't bless sin. I mean, you just can't. I can't come up with a scenario in which you have a same-sex union that you're gonna bless. I mean, you can't eat dog poop. I mean, I guess you can, but I mean, you can't argue that it's nutritionally good. I don't think you can argue it tastes good, but I guess you can eat it. Well, likewise, you can't bless sin. I mean, there's nothing of God that anywhere in Scripture blesses sin, right? Sin is contrary to God. So it's pretty disturbing. He's maybe trying to appease the priests in Germany, but there's nothing about this that is encouraging, because what it does is this is just the first step. And it opens the door for this stuff to be taken further and further and further, in which then, we have precedents that in Germany, there's been special cases where the priests have been blessing these unions. Therefore, some priests in America can say, well, if in Germany this is allowed, then this should be allowed here. And then, all of a sudden, all these priests are doing it in all these different places. And then, then we need to just come up with a blessing in general for same-sex unions. That's different than an actual marriage, but they should be blessed too. Everyone needs a blessing. And then it goes to the fact that they don't see a difference. That's a slippery slope. That's how it happens. And very, very discouraging that the Catholic Church is moving in that direction. Topic number 2, football. Now, I'm not doing this to gloat, but the Buffalo Bills kicked Miami Dolphins' butt last Sunday in football. Now, that was coming after Miami having a 70-point win over, I think it was the Broncos. They won 70 to, I don't know what Denver had. They didn't have much, but they just blew them out of the water. And then the Bills go and rack up 48 on the Dolphins and beat them by 28 points, and it wasn't close after the first quarter. And the Dolphins quarterback, Tua, was asked, how does he handle when he has these setbacks like what he had on the field with the Buffalo Bills? How do you overcome it? He was asked that in a post-game press conference, and his response was really cool. He says, I think the best thing about being a believer in Jesus Christ, to me, is that the good Lord up above doesn't care whether you win a game or whether you lose a game. He goes on to say, for me, it's been a little tough having to play on Sundays, having to understand that I'm not able to go to church. Really, a lot of it, he says, is having to watch church online after the games and things like that. But then he goes on to talk about, he has this platform where he's able to profess his faith, and a faith that he firmly believes in, and he has since a very young age. He talks about the power of prayer and how it helps him on the sidelines. He says, when I'm out there, I even pray before I go out to a series and whatnot. He says, I'm always praying. I'm on the sidelines, and it looks like I'm talking to myself. He says, I'm speaking in tongues. Some people think, what? This guy knows how to speak in tongues? And he talks about how he grew up in a non-denominational Christian church and so forth. And I think that's kind of cool. The whole speaking in tongues on the sidelines, I don't know. I don't understand why you can't just speak in your own language, or to speak in English. And I don't understand the purpose of that. But the fact that he publicly professes his faith, and he talks about how his faith not only gives him the strength to do what he's doing. And last year he had to battle several concussions, and it didn't look like maybe he'd even be able to continue in football. But the fact that he sees it as a platform to be able to share his faith, I think that's cool. So on one hand, we've got the Pope that is making Christians maybe not look all that great, and you got an NFL quarterback that is doing Christians well by how he sees himself and how he sees the platform that God's given him, and that he even turns to prayer before he goes out there on the field. So I thought that was kind of cool. And so that was the good. The Pope was the bad, and now it's time for the ugly. I had a soccer game last night, and playing this team that is always just like super aggressive. I hate playing this team because they've got two people that on the team are probably like mid-30s, probably like 6'3", maybe more like 6'4". I don't think 6'5", but we'll say 6'3", 6'4". One of them is probably well over 300 pounds, and the other guy's much thinner. But like they come in and they're reckless in how they play. Earlier in the game, the one that's well over 300 pounds, I literally caught the ball in my hands, and he's too busy trying to kick it, even though the ball's in my hands, and like he kicks my hands. And I look at the ref, and he's like not doing anything about it. I just start walking out towards the ref with the ball in my hand. I'm like, can you at least blow the whistle? The other guys apologize, like, no, I told you I'm not trying to play dirty. I'm like, that's fine, but to the ref, like, can you blow the whistle when, like, I get a body part kicked? When I'm already holding onto the ball, he blew the whistle, made me happy, and then, okay, I was still able to throw the ball, which is what I was able to do before, but give me a whistle, because you have to punish reckless behavior. And then, so, like, later in the game, this other guy, he's much thinner, but he's still a very large, very tall individual. He runs like 900 miles an hour, reckless. There's an art to any sport. You have to be in control of your body, or you're going to hurt yourself, or you're going to hurt other people. And like 3 or 4 minutes left in the game, this guy's coming at me, running full force. I'm on the ground and get the ball, and he's like sliding into friggin' first base, and he cleats me just above my shin guard. And I'm sitting there, and like, I don't stay on the ground. I've played soccer. I'm 51 years old. I played soccer since I was probably 7 or 8, and I've broken a nose. I've dislocated fingers. I've had a bruised thigh. I think I've only come out of the game once or twice in my whole life. I just don't stay on the ground. But after this guy like cleats me, I'm in some serious pain, and I'm sitting there holding my shin, and I'm rolling around, all over the ground, in pain. And before I know it, the ref like has blown the whistle, and they've done the kick, and they're moving the ball up the field again. My team is. I'm still rolling around holding my leg. No one noticing or seeming to care. Well, eventually I like noticed the play still going on, and I know I've got to kind of get up and finish the game. There's 3 or 4 minutes left in it, and I still have to make a few other saves. And needless to say, like, when the game's over, I'm feeling like this pain that's pushing up on my shin guard, and literally, like, the picture that I've got from what my leg looked like yesterday, it looks like I have 2 knees. I have my regular knee, and then I have, like, underneath my knee what looks to be my knee. In fact, like, underneath my knee looked bigger than my knee. And that was from, like, this guy's, like, just plowing into my shin, you know, all 6'3", 6'4" of him, and how much ever he weighs, like, at full force. And it was painful, to say the least. And just, like, I've never in my life had something swell up so quickly and so large as what that did. And, you know, as I reflect upon just everything going on in the world today, the civil war amongst the Republicans, and you know, the budget deal that's coming up, and Trump's trials, and just all the politics between the left and the right, and so forth, and just how people treat each other in society nowadays. People are just a lot more careless and reckless. They just don't care. And when people don't care, and when they're reckless, people are going to get hurt. And, you know, I talked about it in my podcast last week, is like, I really wonder what's going to happen next year, because we just have a lot of people who don't care anymore. Civility has gone out the window, and I get it. I mean, listen, we're running ourselves into a debt that we can't recover from. Religion's being attacked. I mean, there's a lot of things that there are to be concerned about, and maybe even to ultimately have some serious divisions and potentially even disputes over. I get that, but in the process, there's just a lot of recklessness that's going on, a lot of rage. And I have to tell you, from a Christian perspective, and that's who I'm speaking to in this podcast, recklessness and rage are not fruits of the Spirit. They're fruits of the enemy. So, you know, we're going to have disagreements on things, but we don't need to be reckless and have rage in how we handle it. That's not only true in sports, but listen, it's going to be true in your marriage. If you're having some troubles with your spouse, I would encourage you to leave the recklessness and the rage out of it. When you're dealing with your kids, if you're going to be reckless with them and you're going to rage on them, your kids are going to rebel against that. That is not going to bring the results that you hope that it's going to bring. In your job, you know, if you're ticked off with your boss, if you throw civility out the window and you just become this, rabid person that's foaming in the mouth, volatile and just filled with rage and all kinds of recklessness, doesn't care, if you blow up the client list or you blow up the project, it's not going to work well. And I think that's just true in every aspect of life, that there's a civility and a common courtesy in a dialogue that's been lost. No one's dialoguing anymore. Everyone's just, yelling at each other, threatening each other, and setting off these like bombs, not necessarily literal bombs, but, just bombs to kind of blow up situations. And I just don't think that it's good for society. And I don't think it's becoming of who we are as Christians when we're called, as Jesus says, if someone strikes you, we're to turn the other cheek. If someone wants you to go with them a mile, go with them 2 miles, and that we're supposed to love our enemies. So once again, we don't get rolled over. We have to stand for what it is that we believe in, but they need to know that we're Christians by our love. So I was in too much pain to try to inflict pain back on this individual, but from a Christian perspective, even though he showed great carelessness and recklessness towards me, I need to not retaliate and do the same back to him. That was my lesson from soccer, and I think it applies once again to marriages, to kids, to work, to politics, to religion, and to a million other things. So a little bit all over the place on this one. The good, the bad, and my shin, which is the ugly. But I appreciate you joining me for this episode of God Talk, and I look forward to talking to you next week. God bless and have a great day.